Hello and welcome to episode 101 of Communicast, the podcast dedicated to enhancing communication skills. I'm your host, Scott D'Amico, president of Communispond. Today I'm joined by Saahil Metha, a global entrepreneur, peak performance coach, and author of Break Free. Saahil has lived and led across continents, from engineering and investment banking to diamond trading, hospitality, and now coaching business leaders to scale their personal and professional summits. In this episode, we explore the powerful intersection of clarity, courage, and communication. Saahil shares how fear and experimentation shaped his career, why clarity is the cornerstone of confident communication, and how to avoid miscommunication in today's cross-cultural, multi-generational workplace. This episode is packed with real-world insights you can immediately apply. Let's dive in. Saahil, thank you so much for joining me today.
Such a pleasure to be here, Scott.
The pleasure's all mine. Really looking forward to our conversation today. Before we get too far into it, if you can, just tell the listeners maybe a little bit about you, your career journey, and the exciting work that you're doing today.
Absolutely. So let's start from the beginning, as my mentor always says. I was born and raised in Belgium, parents of Indian descent. I've lived in 5 countries across 3 continents, so I kind of consider myself a global citizen and with a global outlook, which is fantastic. And it's just allowed me to understand different accents, different type of cultures, and whatnot. So that's wonderful. In terms of career, I studied electronic and electrical engineering. That was my bachelor's and master's degree. And from that, I realized that investment banks love engineers. And so when my priority was making as much money as I could, that seemed like the best and obvious career choice. And from then, I've transitioned into the real world of real estate. I run a couple of businesses in diamond trading, in hospitality. I've also experienced a startup that fell flat on its face. So gone through all the life's roller coasters, as they say. And then now I'm focusing a lot of my time on, coaching successful business owners become even more successful.
Fantastic. I must say that's probably one of the most fascinating journeys of the guests to date. We're just over 100 episodes at this point. So I think I caught engineering, investment banking, diamond trading, hospitality, startups, living on multiple continents in different countries, and now working into coaching executives, coaching leaders to help them to be more successful. So if you think about that, what's kind of the connecting line between all of those different things that really, I guess, brought you to where you are today to help coaches or to help leaders grow and be successful?
That's a great question, Scott. And I find that I had the courage to experiment. I find if I look at my father, for example, I look at some of my friends' parents, they started in one career and that's what they did their entire life. Their working life, I should say. And that kind of became their identity. But in my case, I told you I was chasing money. That's all I cared about. I realized later in life that there's a lot more to life than making as much money as possible. So I realized that wasn't the environment that I wanted to be in. It didn't feel right. And so I feel like I experimented. I wasn't afraid to try things that came along my way, made a lot of bad decisions, but I guess that's what allowed me to grow as a human being. So courage, and I have to say to some extent, even fear. Some people think that courage helps you to make decisions, but sometimes fear drives you as well. Fear of living a life with regret, for example. I didn't want to wake up one day and say, I wish I spent more time with family, or I wish I had the guts to say yes when I really wanted to say no, or whatever that is. And so, yes, I rode the wave, and people might say, well, wow, you've tried a lot of things. But if I look back and I reflect, I go, hey, I'm in a place now where I have a lot of joy. I feel fulfilled. Yes, there's still roller coasters that come and go, but I'm now serving successful leaders, become more successful, business owners specifically. And just to be able to serve another person and make an impact, it's very fulfilling. And at the same time, and what people don't realize, or at least I didn't realize, is along that journey, I didn't realize what impact it would have on me. So you go in with somewhat of selflessness, but you end up getting a lot of benefits yourself. And they've actually, all these things, learning from all these amazing leaders has actually helped me in the few businesses that I run myself to become a better leader as well. So will things change from now till I eventually hang my hat? Possibly. I don't want to attach myself to anything, but where I am right now certainly feels really good.
Well, that's definitely a positive, right? Not everyone can say that to be fulfilled and to have joy and to feel really good where they are at. So congratulations to you. And two things that jumped out to me there is this idea of fear and courage to experiment. And if I think about that through the lens of communication and effective communication, I think there's a bit of both play into that, right? Having some sort of fear about your communication, I think oftentimes can cause people to slow down a little bit for the fear of the repercussions of knee-jerk reactions and sending something that's maybe too harsh or abrasive or saying something you may regret later, but then also the courage to speak up, the courage to have your voice heard. So, if I think about that and then I think about really what it means to be a great communicator, with your diverse experience that we've just touched on, I'm sure you've interacted with a tremendous amount of people that are really, really strong communicators. So, as you think about that, right, when you hear that somebody's a great communicator, what does that mean to you, or what's the image that it conjures up?
So I believe there's multiple parts to this, Scott, and let's break it down a little bit. The first part is having clarity, right? If no matter how good you are at speaking, no matter how good you can elaborate on ideas and you listen to others and your voice is clear, you project it well, all the things that immediately come to mind when someone thinks of a good communicator. They're probably thinking of someone who's given an amazing speech that had a big impact on them. I would say that's because they had clarity. They were 100% sure and convinced about what they were speaking about. So if I want to be a good communicator and I don't have clarity on either the subject matter, the business that I'm in, life in general, and which way I want to go, there's going to be some hesitation, some doubt. Maybe something doesn't feel right when the audience is listening in. So I believe through the leaders that I've come across and my own experience is that clarity is absolutely key when it comes to a great communicator.
And along with that clarity is going to come confidence. And that is definitely one of the big things that helps to get buy-in for what you're communicating about. And as you were touching on clarity, right, you need to be very clear in your content, your subject, what you're speaking about. And I think as well, it's important to be clear on your goals, your desired outcome. For the most part, anytime you're interacting, there's some sort of goal that either consciously or subconsciously you have in mind. You want somebody to think differently, behave differently, feel differently. Even if it's a general conversation, you're hoping that maybe this person comes away from the interaction feeling positive about it. So as you're clear about your content and you're confident in that content, and then you're clear about your outcomes, it helps you to structure your message, whether it's a keynote presentation, a big speech that you're giving, or just a one-on-one conversation with someone on your staff. Having that clarity on both ends really helps.
Absolutely. And I find that when you don't have clarity, you kind of fall back into these traps where fear is going to kick in. What will the other person think? The people pleasing mentality comes in. But when you're clear on the outcome, you have that additional courage, I feel, because you know where you want to go. And you're like, well, if I don't do anything, I'm just going to be stuck where I am. So let me go and have that important conversation that I've been holding back for so long because I'm very clear on the direction I need to go in.
It's just like getting in your car and not really having a destination. And sometimes I will admit I like to get out and just drive around and the weather's out and you take the top off the Jeep, just drive around and enjoy it with no real clear destination. But I did have a goal is because for me it's relaxing and it's soothing. And in conversations, I think there is a place for that, but more often than not, if I need to just vent or if I need to kind of do stream of consciousness, I'm giving that other person the heads up first, just to say, and once again, I've provided clarity, even though what I'm saying might not be very clear, I've provided them some clarity around why I'm doing this. Here's my goal for what you're about to hear, what you're about to experience. So, yeah, I think tying it off is really, really important.
I love what you just said, Scott, because I find myself as an engineer, engineering mind, I'm always trying to find a solution to a problem. So when someone communicates with me and they don't tell me that they're just venting, immediately I go into, ooh, I should suggest this, and what if they can do that? Only to realize that they don't want to hear anything from me. But had they told me up front that, hey, I want to vent and I feel comfortable doing it in front of you, I'm just going to sit there and listen.
That's something I've had to work at a lot, being a natural kind of problem solver. When somebody brings something to me, my immediate reaction is, oh, well, have you tried this? Oh, maybe you should think about this. Maybe you should do. And it took me a long time to realize, both professionally and personally, that that's not always what that person's coming to you for. And you learn that over time as you interact with people on your team, you have to interact with your family. Either they'll start to tell you, like, listen, I don't want a solution. I just got to tell you what happened. Or, hey, can I pick your brain? I need some ideas on this. Or you'll pick up on subtle cues around how they're communicating, whether it's the tone of their voice or their body language. And then from there, it's important to pause, process as you're thinking, maybe play back what you heard, and then it can kind of spur that conversation along as, okay, is this a solution oriented conversation or just really a true, I have to get it out of my system conversation?
Absolutely. And I'd add one more thing to that as well. I love what you just said, Scott, is if something is not clear, be curious and ask and don't assume, especially when we live in a world where there's cross culture, people have different accents, different ways of saying things, even cross generational, right? How someone who's a Gen Z versus baby boomer, how they express themselves could be very different. So if something is not clear and you have even the slightest of doubts, just be curious, ask a question. With my wife, she's always telling me, she goes, Sahil, we've been married for 18 years. Well, it's going to be 18 soon. Why do you keep asking me so many questions? And I say, honey, this relationship matters too much to me, and I don't want to assume something which can take me down a wrong path. So if it's okay with you, just allow me to ask a few questions so I'm crystal clear.
Fantastic advice. And I have two teenagers, and I feel like I'm learning a whole new language some days with the terms that I'm like, wait a minute. They say, I was like, does that mean that's good or does that mean that's bad? And 6 months later, it can actually flip the terminology. So it's this idea of, I love how you said, being curious enough to pause and to ask. So we hit on curiosity, we hit on clarity. And if you think about the workplace today, you mentioned it's global. Most organizations either have employees, they have offices, they have customers, suppliers all across the world. They have an employee base likely that spans, gosh, I don't even know how many generations are likely in the workforce today. So as you think about the skills that somebody needs to be successful and effective in the workplace today, this kind of this globally interconnected, almost always on type of world in which we live that has multiple generations, to be successful, what are some of the additional key communication skills that really are important?
I find as a leader, it's very important to make sure that the others are aligned with the message that you are sharing. There's so many times that I've assumed and I've seen other leaders assume once they shared it, maybe someone doesn't want to speak up, they didn't want to sound stupid. So give everyone a safe space to be curious and ask questions and ask and be sure that they understood what you said. Because if you said gray and they heard dark gray, they're going to do something else. And then a week later, you just feel, why is this not done? Or, we talked about this. Why have you done that? You've wasted time, you've wasted resources. the other person feels like a fool, it doesn't help anyone. But as a leader, if you can tap into aligning with everyone and giving them a safe space to ensure that there are no stupid questions, that everyone can speak freely, oh my goodness, then you get efficiency because everyone's walking in the same direction. And I'd love to kind of share with you a story, one from my mountaineering, of what can happen when communication goes wrong. Because, in the office, I think people take it a bit lightly. What's the worst that can happen? You lose time, you lose money. Worst case, you lose your job. Okay. On the mountain, if you fail to communicate properly, you could lose your life or get severely injured. Now, we just finished a 20,000 foot plus peak. We're on our way down. And a couple of the climbers said, call a helicopter. Now, when you call for a helicopter, it usually means there's been a problem, like someone's got injured and there's no way to bring them down. So we need a helicopter to come and rescue them. But they were just reacting based on being very tired. I mean, it was grueling. I think we were on the mountain for about 16 hours. And at high altitude, so very, very tired. And as a team leader, I said, look, I'm not calling a helicopter. But at some point, I realized that you have to play ball. Even though I didn't want to argue with them, I knew what the answer would be when I called the helicopter service. So, I got in touch with the guide. We used a satellite phone. We called the company and they asked, is anyone injured? Blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. We're not sending a helicopter. It doesn't matter if you want to pay. It's a risky operation. So they only want to do it if there's a real need. Now, because we had a satellite phone, we couldn't communicate with families. So the guide told the coordinator who was in Lima in Peru to message on the group chat just updates. Now the coordinator, all he wrote on the group chat was they've asked for a helicopter. He didn't say because they were tired, everyone is fine, they've accomplished the summit. Now, every parent, spouse, child who's on that group is thinking, is it my family member? They're not sleeping, they're calling each other, they're crying, there's panic. It's a disaster. It wasn't until 24 hours later when we had connectivity, we connected. And that's when, everyone's just in panic mode and we calm them down, telling them, hey, everyone's okay. So I'm giving an example of had that communication had enough information to be crystal clear of what happened, it would have saved so much pain for so many people.
Mm-hmm. So if I think about that, I think two things: clarity, and then also context of the situation. Right? Sending that type of a, cryptic might not be the right word, but that type of a short, brief message and that type of scenario, very different than just sending out a quick update if you're going on a walk in your neighborhood or whatever it may be. But yeah, if you think about need to be clear, need to think about the context of the situation and the audience that is receiving that. So as you're communicating, whether it is you are climbing a mountain, you're working on a project, for a big client, anywhere in between, kind of think through the lens of, okay, is it clear? What's the context of this situation and who's this going to? That will likely help inform. Do I need to add a little bit to this? Or maybe it's a dissertation that you're sending and realizing, what, I could probably scale this back a little bit. And once again, I kind of going back to my kids, I talk about this sometimes with their communication. And okay, I'll just get a message occasionally from my daughter. I'll look down, I'll be in a meeting at work and look over like, Dad. And then a minute later, Dad. I'm like, what? Oh my gosh. Like, I'm thinking they're at school, something's going wrong. So once again, we kind of talk about where the emotions go, because when you're communicating, intent falls by the wayside. It's really how it's received. That's really what you ultimately need to be thinking about, is how is this message going to be received by this audience based on this context? And as you get clearer and clearer in your message, as you mentioned, you pick up efficiencies. You're not having to do things 6-7 times to try and get your message across. You frustrate people and you waste time.
I love what you said, and especially in a world today when I find people are more in a rush than ever before in everything that they do. They're just always on the run. someone sends a message in text, for example, or email. Now, the word that I was emphasizing when I wrote that and the word you emphasized when you read it, was it the same? Does it mean the same thing? Could it mean something completely different? Because what if someone does the work based on the word they emphasized, which was actually correct? Again, a lot of efficiency gone. So many times when I'm writing, I ask myself, how else could this be interpreted? And do I need to add a little bit more substance to make it more clear? Or do I need to have a follow-up call if it's, not to an entire team, if it's just to one person that, hey, I just want to make sure that this was properly understood, but which word was emphasized and which one was understood? I see that challenge happening again and again and again. And especially when people start using, like you said, with generations, they use words that now are being added, by the way, to Webster's and Oxford Dictionary, but you haven't heard them properly, and you're just going, "What does this even mean?"
I saw
And
a few of those like
that even
that.
takes me to another point, Scott, is when I use a word, maybe my definition of the word is different from your definition. They might overlap 70, 80%, but there could be nuances. Like when I'm coaching these business owners on core values, they might say something like, oh, trust is important, or, relationships. I say, okay, well, let me write down what your definition is. Because if I ask 10 people, they're giving me 10 different responses.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember at my prior employer, this was years ago, we went through a stretch where we had a very large sales team, hundreds and hundreds of people, and we had a couple year period where there was just a lot of turmoil going on, industry challenges where we had to do a lot of reorganizations. And it felt like almost every time that a calendar invite came out from leadership with just a very vague or cryptic message, like team update or sharing updates, a lot of people got laid off. And so I remember one time I was vividly when I was driving down the highway and my phone just starts going crazy, text messages and phone calls. I'm like, what's going on? Like, hey, we just got a calendar invite about organizational updates. That's all it says. So I had to call our COO and say, listen, I don't think anything's going on, right? He's like, no, it's fine. We're just sharing some updates. I'm like, listen, you've got to resend that, provide some clarity because of the context. Once again, the history of what people have been through, people are receiving that message much differently than how you're sending it. I get it. You're busy. You just wanted to get a quick invite out. But on the receiving end of it, it's causing chaos because of, what's happened over the past 2 years. Shifting gears a little bit, if we think about your success and where you are today, if I ask someone close to you, what would they tell me that is the key communication skill that has helped you to get to where you are today? What might they share with me?
I'm actually going to say listening.
Why is that?
I found that the previous version of me, Scott, would listen to the voice in my head that's interpreting everything that you're saying, and even in some cases, formulate a response. And I realize when I'm doing that, I'm not really listening to you carefully. I'm not giving you the attention that you deserve. And or I might be writing notes while you're speaking. And now with these amazing tools that you can now use to record, so you don't have to worry about typing in any notes. It's so much easier. So now with these tools and being aware that, hey, Sahil, don't listen to that voice in your head, listen to the other person. I'm understanding the other person better. And as a coach or even as a friend, as a leader in the company, that's so key because when I understand the other person, I'm able to communicate a lot more effectively.
I've never heard it articulated quite that way before. And I really like it, this idea that you're in essence listening to your own brain process as somebody else is speaking. You're not truly listening, right? You're hearing it. And as you mentioned, you're trying to formulate your response or automatically formulating your response. And I will tell you, that's one of the hardest things to unprogram or deprogram your brain to do, to truly just try to block that out and focus in on what that person is saying and then be comfortable taking a beat to process it. I'd say that's one of the hardest things that with the work that we do is getting people comfortable with silence.
Mm.
That it's okay to have 2, 3, 4, even 5 seconds of silence when you're communicating with somebody to process. It's a powerful thing to do, not only for yourself to allow you to truly understand what's going on and come up with a thoughtful response. But it signals to that person that you were listening and that you care enough to take the time to actually think about it and not just fire right back with your immediate gut response to it. Being able to be comfortable with pausing and silence is a powerful skill that can transform your career regardless of the job that you have. So that's what we always work with people, is to get comfortable with pausing and silence.
I love what you just said, Scott. And to add with this, to add to the silence is I would also check in on myself emotionally. Sometimes things would be said that might trigger me. And I want to make sure that I'm not, as you would say, just that gut instinct, that gut reaction. It's reaction. I don't want to react. I want to respond. And so by pausing and asking myself, is this coming from a place of pain, from a trigger that just got pushed, which has maybe nothing to do with this conversation, but some past trauma or incident that hasn't yet been resolved? Or is it the actual response that I wish to give? And that has saved me many times from saying the wrong thing or something very silly that probably, again, would have resulted in regret.
The difference between response and react is huge. It is sometimes just the verbiage can be very subtle, but the impact that a response versus a reaction has is massive. Even if it's only a couple of words different, or the tone in which it's delivered is different, or the body language is different. As you mentioned, if it triggered you, you're on edge, it brings up some sort of past emotion. And we talk about that pause and that silence. Sometimes that pause and silence can be overnight. You say, you know what? I really need to think about this. Just give me some time to process. Let me circle back to you tomorrow. Or simply just shutting down your email, don't do anything, walk away, kind of get back to neutral, then come back, reread it. You might need to walk away again, depending on the message. I've had some of those. But sometimes I found that maybe I saw something in the first sentence that kind of set me off, and then I just misread the rest of the message, right? I didn't read it correctly. Then when I came back in a calmer state and read it, I'm like, oh, okay, that's not actually what I thought that I read. So yeah, being able to do that, and so you can respond versus react, is absolutely a game changer. Who has been someone from throughout your career that's had an influence on your communication style, whether it's someone personally, professionally? Maybe you've taken from something from them and incorporated it into the way that you communicate with folks.
What immediately comes to mind, Scott, is some of the great speakers that I've heard on stage. They communicate with clarity. They have a short window in order to deliver a lot of information to you, and they have to deliver it in a way that hopefully some of it sticks and can then have a benefit in your life once you leave that room. So what I found is when time is limited, you can ask yourself, what are the fewest amount of words that can come out of my mouth that will give the highest ROI? And I even want to change that statement to ROTI, return on time invested, right? If someone is listening to me, they've given me some of their time. And if I'm just going to go blah, blah, blah in circles and this and that, it's not going to be as effective. But if I just say, what are the fewest number of words that need to come out of my mouth in order for the listener, whether it's an individual, an audience, whatever it ends up being, to have a better life.
And for me, it goes back to something that we talked about a little bit earlier. It's this idea of focusing on the audience. I have my message, I have my agenda, my goals. That's great, but I need to think through it through the lens of how is this going to be received by the audience? What are my goals for them to come away with this? And then to your point, how can I condense that? People are busy. If I can get this done in 7 minutes versus 27 minutes, fantastic. They're going to appreciate it. Maybe if I'm using stories, I'm using analogies. And I think above all else, I'm being authentic. That for me is one of the things that I always think about, especially as I look at well-known speakers and well-known business professionals, influencers on, say, LinkedIn. If you think of a Gary Vaynerchuk versus a Simon Sinek, both very well known, both great at what they do. Their styles are very different, but they're both, if you watch hours and hours and hours and hours of them speaking, they're the same person every single time. They really lean into that authenticity, which I think helps build connections with people.
Absolutely. And when you're not worried about what other people think, the best version of you comes out.
I love that. I love that. Sahil, as we're wrapping up here, what piece of closing advice would you have for folks listening to this? Just really around the importance of the skills that we talked about today.
I would say, apart from what you shared, if there's something that where you think there's a reaction coming in, especially when it's something in which is a disagreement, please don't react and reply. Please respond when you're emotionally neutral. And I would even take it one step further and say, don't have a conversation that's very serious about a dispute on text. Because the chance of a misunderstanding is so high and it can go sideways very quickly. I've seen whenever I've had a disagreement with someone, I schedule a time to speak to them many hours later or the next day. By that time, both of us have calmed down a bit. We've had a chance to reflect. When we're able to share and answer if there's any confusion, or even if we sense that they don't understand, you can elaborate on what you're speaking about. But it saves so many issues that can crop up. So that's, I guess, the learnings that I've had to pick up the hard way.
Yes.
But relationships for me are very important, and I want to give them the respect they deserve.
Yes, if we can save somebody some of that, the pain of going through all the miscommunications through using text, and when we say text, email, Slack, Teams, not voice to voice, face to face, because as frequent as miscommunications happen, even when you are speaking with somebody on the phone, virtually, in person, the likelihood of a miscommunication happening when it's done in text is exponentially higher. So respond, don't react, pause. And when it comes to misunderstandings or challenging situations, absolutely do them voice to voice, in person, when you've had time to reflect on it, go back to neutral.
And I want to give one very quick example, if I
Yes.
may. I'm going to share a 7-word sentence. I'm going to be pretty blah as I say it. I never said he stole my money. Now, this 7-word sentence, depending on which word I emphasize, has a different meaning. And
I'm playing through them in my head right now. Yes.
Yeah, I want the audience to go through each one of those. But here's the thing. If I'm having a dispute with someone on any of these platforms, as you highlighted earlier, and I emphasized one of those words, the chance of you understanding it with the same probability, right, which is 1 in 7, that's a terrible probability. 1 in 7 that you get it right.
I'm not taking that
the
bet.
kind of risk you take in your business, that I have a 1 in 7 chance of this becoming successful? Then why are you in that business? So if you don't apply it in your business, or selecting a restaurant or a travel destination or whatever, why is it allowed in communication?
That's fantastic. I absolutely love that, Sahil. That's a great spot to end on. I really do appreciate you joining me today. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And if folks want to get in touch with you, learn about the work that you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way is to find me either on social media. On LinkedIn, it's Saahil Metha, Saahilmehta, or they can visit my website on www.saahilmehta.com. Reach out to me, would love to connect.
Perfect. I will be sure to put the links to those in the show notes so people can connect as they listen to this. Once again, Sahil, thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Scott.
Take care. Special thanks again to my guest, Saahil Metha, for joining us and sharing his perspectives on clarity, courage, and the power of intentional communication. As we wrap up, remember this: the greatest communicators aren't the loudest, they're the clearest. They pause, they listen, they align their words with their emotions and intent. Subscribe to Communicast so you can continue learning from thoughtful leaders like Saahil. And if today's episode helped you reflect on how you communicate under pressure or across differences, consider leaving a rating or review. It helps us grow and reach more listeners like you. Thanks, and have a great day.